it makes me wonder. I know this is, you clarified through the city, but I'm wondering where these ordinances originated from. I mean, whose idea is this, basically?
Yeah, they're actually coming from different departments in the city. They're written by the planning department staff with help from the city attorney's office. And from what we understand, there are some of the neighborhood associations in the downtown area specifically that have been interested in these for a while. And as well, there's probably some help from the redevelopment agency as they have their vision of the downtown core and what the downtown should be in building downtown into something that they would like to see. And so it's coming from a couple of different angles, but there is a lot of political weight behind it, and that's why it's so important for this coalition to come together right now.
Okay, so it sounds like some important people are interested in seeing what happens with this. Now let me ask you, is everybody in the neighborhood wanting these group homes to go away?
No, definitely not. There's a large number from the neighborhood that are coming forward and saying, you know, this is not what we want. We've had good experience with group homes. The way it's set up at the present time, homes that have 6 or less would be allowed to stay. My concern is that that's for now, but you know, later on that's going to be put on the chopping block as well.
Okay.
But I actually had one homeowner who said, we have a group home across from us, and if those little ladies weren't there, I would feel that we had a loss in our neighborhood. So I think that there's some level of certainly concern from the community about what's happening because of these ordinances to their community.
Well, and a point someone brought up to me recently was that the irony is that one of the arguments about this is sort of lowering property values, but the truth is that a lot of families could not have afforded to buy homes in downtown San Jose if that were not true. And so I guess what comes up for me is probably not a nice thing to say, but what comes up for me is sort of, well, I got mine, so now all of you people go away. And I guess we did a show on welfare reform, we've talked about other things, and there seems to be this community feeling, actually national feeling, about sort of wanting to make people who are less fortunate sort of disappear, just go away from us. Let's take a look at some of the specific objections people have. Okay? Well, the first is that property values are lowered by group homes in the neighborhood. We don't want those kind of people in my neighborhood where I'm raising my children. And there are poorly run group homes which have been cited in the media, and the assumption is that all of them are run poorly. So we'll kind of go through this, some of which we've discussed. But in terms of property value, I mean, Larry, what's the reality behind that?
Well, the reality behind that is there's a lot of market-driven forces that have made a lot of these residential homes buy up property and set up shop basically in the downtown area. And some of those forces don't have anything to do with property values, actually. There are things like, that's the transportation hub of Santa Clara County. A lot of people in these homes don't drive for many reasons, and they need that kind of transportation in order to get to some of the other services they need, whether it be 12-step meetings or some of the other care services that they need. As well, being downtown for these people means that they can walk to a grocery store, to a 7-Eleven, or to other activities that they need to be involved with. And so that's why a lot of them are in that area. So property values, these facilities don't lower property values because, as we were saying earlier, they are usually well-run facilities. The people have chores, they keep up their facilities. They're not run-down houses, and so they're not blight on their communities.
Okay, but that's one of the fears people have, which is, you know, my neighborhood, it's going to be harder to sell my home if we have people like that in the neighborhood. Which makes me ask you, how involved have the people, the actual residents of these homes, been in this discussion? I mean, has anybody asked them what they think, or?
Yeah, we've actually talked with a lot of the residents of the homes, and many of them from Alliance have been very helpful in telling us their stories. And that's what the real important thing about this to realize is that these are people we're affecting, and these are faces, and these are people's lives that are being affected. These aren't homes, these aren't whether a home is kept up or not, but It's a person's life and how they're allowed to live, and whether we're going to allow them to live in our neighborhoods and be inclusive of them, or whether we're going to say no and send them out to the streets or into jail or into our county hospital systems. And that's what the argument is really
Yeah,
about.
and actually it's affecting them right now. There's a lot of fear and terror in some of the people at Zoe House, and one woman in particular, I remember at the last meeting that we had, said, please don't make me homeless, please don't take my home away from me, please don't make me move. Another one said, you know, we just don't count. We're not important. They just want to get rid of us. We're a problem. And I was really surprised at how candid this young man made that statement. It was sort of his reality that we don't count. We don't matter.
Well, and we are talking about people who historically have not had political clout. I mean,
None.
you mentioned kind of being disenfranchised,
That's exactly it.
and so that's part of, well, since you're sort of needy, then you sort of are at the mercy of whatever we decide to give you, sort of thinking. And I think I'm pleased that you've involved them in this discussion, because if nothing else, the voices can be heard and maybe make human faces for people who are making these decisions.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would think also it's important to realize that they've tried to become good neighbors. A group of them took a part of Push Park and maintained that for some number of months, doing planting and cleanup there. They are quick to let staff know if they see anybody with drugs or alcohol on the street, so that the staff can report them to the police to make the neighborhood safer for them, because they want to be safe. They have a need too to be safe in their community. This is their home.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. We're talking about people's homes. Okay. Now the second one was, I don't want those kind of people in my neighborhood where I'm raising my children. Okay, and part of the belief about people that are different is that we're often afraid of people who are different. And that sort of fear that, well, if I let, particularly, I know part of the controversy is alcohol and drugs, people who are being referred to these homes from the criminal justice system. So that sort of fear that, gee, you're letting loose all these convicts and drug peddlers on my neighborhood. And what's the actual, I mean, the reality behind that?
You know, it's interesting. I think a number of these people come from other communities. They have families, they have wives and children. They get a DUI, and they're remanded because they have, you know, a reasonable family life and a home. They're remanded to one of these living situations during the week, and on the weekends they go home. So it could be from somebody from your, you know, next door to you that finds himself in this situation because they were out partying and they were driving recklessly. You know, they're not all criminals. Not to say that driving, you know, under intoxication isn't a criminal event. I certainly believe that. But if they were able to get that part of their life under control, they would be no different from you or I.
Exactly.
And truly what they are in the referral programs is none of them are violent criminals. They all have minor offenses that deal with drugs or alcohol. They don't have, even burglary offenses are considered violent, and so none of them are allowed in these programs. And then each one of these homes as well have their own criteria, which are even stricter. So we don't have a case of felons, we don't have a case of violent criminals coming out and living in communities. They're people who've gone through formal treatment programs, and then this is the last step in their treatment program to try to get them mainstream back into society without needing to have an affliction to drugs or to alcohol, and be able to get back and become productive members of society again.
Well, I think part of this too is the requirements for living in clean and sober home is also often that you need to be working. So we're talking about people that, you know, they're going to work 9 to 5, and then they come home, and that's, you know, where they live.
They have to be either working or in school, and depending on the amount of hours they work per day or the amount of hours that they go to school, they're required to attend meetings during the day. Everyone's required to go to a 12-step meeting at night, and if you're not working full-time, you have to attend another one during the day. If you're not working at all, you have to go to as many as 3 or 4 meetings a day. So their time is very consumed with treatment and with different kinds of activities.
Now, part of the skepticism from people who are watching might be, gee, this could be a coalition of people who are making big bucks off of the poor and unfortunate and are afraid of losing their livelihood by having the homes removed, and that's really what this is about. What's the reality of people who make their living by owning these homes?
It's interesting because somebody called me recently wanting to set up a home. And when I went over the economics of it, he said, I can't afford to do that. I'm not going to make any money. And I said, well, the goal here is to help people. And he said, yes, but I was looking for an investment. I was told I could make lots of money doing this. Well, it's not true. Many of the families that run homes for the mentally ill are families who take turns on shifts, being there, offering support and help. It's very expensive to run a group home.
And the coalition is full of a lot of nonprofit providers, as well as there are for-profit providers out there. And when we talk about for-profit, they're not people who are planning on making a lot of money on this. They're people who just don't have nonprofit status and are simply there because they think they can do some good. Many of them operate maybe one home with 10 or 12 people in it, and it is a full-time work for them and then some. They are there all the time and are really caring individuals to be able to do that. So it's not a case of people who open these homes planning on making a lot of money and that they're just afraid that the city is going to do away with their economic viability.
Okay. Well, I thought it was important to ask.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I could certainly
Right.
see that thinking. And, you know, a part of the fear of people who run unlicensed homes in particular is the fear there'd be exploitation of people's Social Security checks, you know, to become the payee and then not provide services. And there certainly are homes at times that have done that. And I think, you know, we're looking at the difference between legislating out of existence versus reform. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
so making that differentiation, which is saying, you know, maybe we need to look more at licensure, maybe we need to look at the qualifications, which sounds
Yeah.
like something very different than, gee, you shouldn't exist.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do as a coalition. We're trying to come up with some other alternatives, either in strengthening some nuisance laws and finding out what some of the actual problems and concerns are, rather than just taking a zoning approach which covers everyone across the board and doing away with things. If we can find out what the true problems are, find ways of addressing those problems and those concerns to make sure that we're all good neighbors within the neighborhoods of San Jose. That's the approach that we want to
Yeah, a
take.
vehicle for the community to be able to communicate when they have a problem. Because we sure want to know if one of our people is creating a problem, a behavior in the community, we want to deal with that and help them understand that that's not good practice. And this is what you need to do in order to be
So
part
maybe
of
to
the
have
community.
more accountability and oversight. We're going to need to close. I want to thank you so much for coming and clarifying this issue for us. Your number's been on the screen. If people
Great.
want to get involved, they can call you.
Great.
They can call the Alliance and see what they can do to help.
Good.
Thank you for coming. Next week, we will turn our focus to step families with Dr. Barbara Oates. Until then, I'm Mary Crocker Cook. Good night.
For topic suggestions, write to Bay Area Psychology at 1723